Coming up on this episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast.
Because in my campaigning, I have learned that I've talked to someone that is young as 20, as old as 97. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they don't know what's going on and why did we spend so much money on this, that, or the other. And
welcome to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. This podcast will provide you with tools and actionable information you can use to help live a more healthy, wealthy, and wise life. It's powered by the over 50 years of medical experience of this Yale University Medical School trained surgeon, who is also a Western State Law School trained attorney with executive experience being a former mayor of Walnut, California, as well as the current chairman of the nonprofit Servants Arms and as president of Choctaw Medical Group Incorporated. This is the Leadership Masterclass edition, already in progress.
One of the things that we like with our Healthy, Wealth, and Wise podcast is that we like to have leaders within the community who are doing stuff, and they're doing stuff that we should all know about. And indeed, a lot of the things that they're doing impact us and many times can be examples for us to follow. And so we're very delighted to have Ms. Laura Franklin with us. And this is her first time being on our Leadership Masterclass Healthy, Wealth, and Wise podcast. So welcome, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
We're absolutely delighted to have you with us today. So Laura, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, hello, everyone. As Dr. Choctaw said, my name is Laura Franklin, and yes, I'm running for city council in my neighborhood. And I grew up the youngest of 9 children, single mom. Service to others has always been in my DNA. I just didn't know it.
Okay. That's a good thing.
By watching my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, also my uncles and my grandfather, people like that, and people in my church. And so I just grew up with that in my heart. And right. I'm the youngest of 9, as I said, and I have grandchildren as well. I have 4 grandchildren.
Okay. Which
is really nice. And it really is true that, as Pastor McCall used to say, if you'd have known they would be this much fun, you would have had them first.
I do understand.
But yeah, I just, I try to work hard. But yeah, I really like serving other folks. Sometimes I do, don't serve myself as I should, but
understood.
It all comes back full circle when folks bless you because you blessed them.
Yes. What goes around comes around.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So tell us about this Baldwin Park thing. You decided to run for city council. I must admit that if one were to pull 100 resumes, running for a city council probably would not be in the top 20. So how did you decide to do this?
That's a great question. So, Doc, I've served as the only housing commissioner here in Baldwin Park since 2022.
And this is Baldwin Park, California.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Baldwin Park, California.
Because we have an international audience, and I just want to make sure they know where Baldwin Park is. Okay, right. Go ahead.
Thank you. And so being a housing commissioner, the reason I got into it because I've been working in housing living in housing, affordable housing for about 25 years. I raised my kids in affordable housing. And so once that position came available, it was during the pandemic, and I really wanted to give back to my community because that's what I was raised to do.
Sure.
And applied, and I just said, and I did that for 2.5 years. But housing commissioners really don't get to do a lot, meaning we do work under housing directors and at the asking of the city council, but because it was just me, I wasn't doing much, but I was pushing the leaders to, hey, let's do something, let's recruit.
Sure.
And then as so many different things happen in not just our community, but throughout the pandemic. And since the pandemic, I realized I need a better seat at the table. And I need to be part of the decision making.
Right.
And with Baldwin Park, California, our brand, if you will, that was given to us is the hub of the San Gabriel Valley. Oh. And it's my thought that, the hub needs to the leadership of the hub needs to reflect the hub.
Sure. Makes sense.
And right now it does not. It is one-sided, and that needs to change. And I want to be a part of the decision making, also the financial, all of that, the helping of the building of it. And that's the better seat. So that's why I'm running. That's one of the reasons I'm running.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. I think many times, and we all live in cities in one form or another, but I just think it is laudatory for individuals, certainly as young as yourself, to say, you know what, I want to do more. I can do more, and to be willing to walk that talk and actually go through the process of going to the meetings, learning the issues, and then deciding what's the best fit for you. Mm-hmm. How large is Baldwin Park, roughly?
Oh my goodness.
Population.
I don't know about as far as mileage, but I could say since I've been campaigning, I've learned that there's over 21,000 registered residents, which I'm sure that number would be greater if everyone was registered.
Sure.
Every adult anyway,
Got it. Okay. And so what is your process for campaigning? What's the mechanism in case there's a 18-year-old who's interested in running? What advice would you give them?
Great question. Again, get involved slowly.
Okay.
Oftentimes, folks want to just jump head first, not really knowing what you're jumping into. But if you start off, and it has nothing to do with what age or stage you're at physically, but you do need to start off slow, because if you're interested in just volunteering, blood banks, or when they do city events, Parks and Rec, they need volunteers. You go there and say, hey, how can I help? And that's how you slowly get to know how your city moves. I mean, libraries. I know a lot of people don't go to libraries anymore. But going to the library and finding out what do they need, because librarians aren't what they used to be as we were little kids,
Sure.
Definitely involved into something really great. And that's how you just start getting more involved with different things. And then you start talking to city leaders. Every resident of any community should be able to go on that website for that city or that community and find out who your leaders are. And you can send them an email, and some of and their office numbers, all of that stuff is there. Or at least it should be there, and just start asking those questions.
Okay, excellent. What is the roughly the racial makeup of Baldwin Park?
So Baldwin Park is, I haven't checked in about a year, but at that time it was about 75% Hispanic.
Okay.
11% African American.
Okay.
And that percentage that's low, let's say 86, so that's 14% that's left, as my math is mathing. That is other. So that could be, that's pretty much Asian, mixed races, or Caucasian.
Okay. All right. And you're African American?
Yes.
Okay. So it's okay. It's all right. That's fine. What say top 2 or 3 things do you want to accomplish as a member of the City Council of Baldwin Park, California?
Great question again. But before I answer that, I just want to say I am not running because I'm an African American woman. I need people to understand that, because that's too obvious.
Good point.
But I guess you could say my top 2 things is really transparency, financial transparency.
Okay.
Because in my campaigning, I have learned that I've talked to someone that is young as 20, as old as 97. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they don't know what's going on and why did we spend so much money on this, that, or the other. And I always try to encourage them, get involved. Again, go to the city council meeting.
Sure.
The fiscal the financial transparency, that's a big deal in this city. It's a big deal in any city, but that's one of my main things. And then also trying to bridge the gap. There is a huge generational gap in Baldwin Park.
Okay.
Within the leadership as well as in the city. And by that, I mean, just like I said, I spoke to a 20-year-old who is not even registered to vote yet, but he's going to now that I've been at his door and talking to him.
Good.
And then the 97-year-old who has been there over 50 years, and she has never met one person in leadership. And it's not saying that anyone is at fault. It's just that sometimes your leadership, depending on their age and stage and maturity, they may only focus on one age group dynamic. Like we do have a young mayor, and this is not accusatory, but we do have a young mayor, and so he may not think off that maybe I do need to reach out to the 90-year-olds who've actually put the work in.
Sure, to build the city.
Yeah, to build the city. And so, and it's easy to forget, right? Because that's not always in your circle of people that you visit. And then what happens with the younger groups, they either don't want to reach up to the grown, and then the older ones sometimes feel like, well, the young ones don't know what they're doing. But to bridge that gap is you need to reach out.
Right.
Be intentional. Have events that circle around the whole community instead of meeting just the few that you know or your demographic.
Exactly. And that makes sense because a lot of times, to your point, we can have our own little club or group within the city that we're most comfortable with.
Correct.
And so we cater to them, but yet we're not responsive to the entire city. And when you're mayor or member of the city council, you represent everybody in your city, whether they voted for you or not.
Correct.
So that makes perfect sense in terms of what types of services would you like to see specifically improved in Baldwin Park?
You know, I have a heart for so many, but I would say the seniors.
Okay.
They're truly the ones who will put in the sweat equity for this city. There are a few here, but I would like to see more because oftentimes when seniors, once they start living alone, because the families have either moved away, either out of state or just too far away to really be there with them, they get lonely.
Right.
You know, I'd like to see some type of outreach service where you literally reach out to the seniors every quarter. So that's something they can expect. And they may say, well, that it costs too much. But do you remember, I don't want to give it any advertisement, but there was a system where you could call 200 people and leave a voice message and they would go out to 200 phone numbers.
Really?
And say, this is such and such, that type of stuff. Because most seniors, depending on the age, a lot of them, maybe not most, they're not with the digital system, they're not with the digital stuff, right?
Understood.
They are by the old school. Either pick up the phone, some things in the newspaper, whatever it is, giving shout outs and just really checking on our seniors. And I'm I'm not saying that we're doing a bad job. I would like to see more of us really being intentional about checking on our seniors. And then I'm big on education as well. I would like to see more resources available directly in Baldwin Park for children and youth who are on the spectrum. Autism spectrum.
Okay.
And there's not much here. And unfortunately, a lot of our children are being diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. And that could be anywhere from nonverbal, it could be ADHD, ADD, all of that. And then if you wrap in society's depression and anxiety that goes along with all of that, and teaching them how to do coping skills and learning how to be self-sufficient. I truly believe that's something that our kids need.
In terms of the kids that are on the spectrum, do you have mainstreaming in Baldwin Park or
yes, we do.
Okay, so they do have the mainstreaming. All right, good. Do you have a senior center in Baldwin Park? Is there like a
yes, we
place?
Do. They do have one. Yes.
Okay.
It's used. It's kind of like we like to say, like church work, the 2080.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of seniors here in Baldwin Park, but when we have senior events, there can be a decent amount, but it definitely does not reflect the percentage that we have here.
Okay. Because I know a number of communities do that, going back to your original comments about keeping the seniors engaged or having something for them to do. Because as you mentioned, many times they don't have or may not have their family around them. And there's no question that with all the stresses in that age range, it's easy to get depressed and alone and on and on type of thing.
And feel forgotten too. During the pandemic, I was a caregiver just because I didn't like being home.
Understood.
And one of my clients former clients actually lives in Baldwin Park. And that's how I found out, the 97-year-old that I spoke of, that's how I found out about her feeling forgotten. No one would bring her food boxes. Her family was, because of her age, family had to be real careful. And she had one daughter and one son who lived really far away. And so I called in the food bank, not the one that our local church serves, but I called another food bank to find out if they could drop off a box and I would sign off on it so she would have food. And they said they couldn't bring it because she had to make the phone call and then she had to come in and fill out forms. So she doesn't drive.
Which is impractical many times for a 97-year-old.
Exactly. So anyways, we did find a way to get her food from another source, but this particular source was within our community. And that's why I was like, we need to really be intentional not to forget them.
Sure.
So.
And elder care is certainly an important area, as are others. But with all the baby boomers certainly entering that whole elder care area, and I'm a part of those baby boomers, and we're supposed to be the largest generation post World War II to enter this stage. There's a lot of need. There's definitely a lot of need, and certainly more need than before. What are the reactions of others, your friends, colleagues, family, to when they find out that you are running for a political office or city council?
It's been mixed. The reactions have been mixed. Most of them are encouraging. There are some that want to know, like, why? What what you're running for? And I hadn't decided to run until February of this year. And I got that, if not you, then who? That
right. If not now, when?
Resonating.
Right.
At this, what did he say to Ruth? Such a time as this. All of that kept just resonating with me everywhere I went. And then I've had some that were really excited, been very encouraging about, you're the perfect person. Oh, they need to have you on there. Baldwin Park would be so fortunate. So I take it all, though. I take the good with the bad.
Yes.
And I just pray over it and let it do what it do. It's like with anything, when I was a teenager, I used to work in a factory. I'm also a former factory worker. That was my first job. And I remember me, my mom, and my sister and brother worked in this place together. And I started off again at the basic job, but I wanted to do more because I've always liked challenging stuff.
Right.
And so there was a time where I got to bid for a job. They put the listing up when a new job posting comes up, and you put your name on the list and you get it by seniority, right? Because they'll train you for whatever it is you need. And I remember when I won that bid, I would be running a hot aluminum press, and it's like Play-Doh. It's basically like a giant Play-Doh machine, except it's hot aluminum.
Right.
And from the end to the beginning, it's probably 150 feet. This machine, these tables, and I have to, with both my hands, guide this, cut this with a torch, the whole nine. And I remember they had bets on me that I would not make it past the first 90 days.
Really? And
of course I did.
Right.
And I became the first female operator in that company, in the history of that company. And I remember my mom coming over because, like I said, she worked in the same place and she was on her break, and she came over, she's looking across at me, and I'm cutting while she's talking. This hot aluminum is keep coming. You can't stop it. And she just said, "My baby." And I said, "Mama, I'm okay. I'm okay." And she said, "Okay." And then she went on back to her department. I kept running my aluminum. When we were done, I went over there to see her and I gave her a hug because she was afraid for me more that, well, maybe she's, because she's a woman. And not to put her down. Again, she's of a different generation.
Understood.
But once I did that, she never told me again that there was nothing I could not do.
Exactly.
So same thing with even city council now. I know I can do it.
Sure.
I know that I can do it. I have no doubts. That's why even if some are just kind of scared for me, and then why at this age, why so late? This is things you want to start doing when you're 25, 30. I said, but no, everybody has a calling for something.
That's right.
Maybe it was supposed to happen a while ago. I don't know.
Right.
But the time is now.
Right. It is what it is.
Now. So exactly. And I accept that. So.
I always think about this quote by Gandhi, which says, "Be the change you want to see in the world." That if there's something that you think should be in the world and to improve things, you do that.
Exactly.
Instead of looking around to see who else is going to do it.
And that's how I used to be. And some things I still get like that, depending on what it is, because I do know some of my limits. But it doesn't make sense for me to sit around, and as they say, representation matters.
Right.
It really does. And I'm not necessarily saying for some little girl who may see, but yeah, it could be for a little girl, little boy. It could be for anybody to say, well, shoot, if she can do it at the stage she's in, I could surely do it at 20, 25, 30, or whatever the case. And as you know, and you know a lot of my health history and different things, and it's time.
Exactly.
It's time.
What would you say is the most difficult part of campaigning for city council in Baldwin Park? And what would you say is the easiest part about campaigning for city council, or most enjoyable?
So I would say the hardest part is my method is grassroots. Right. So I'm
so door to door.
The door to door.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of walking.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of financial assistance in grassroots, but it's not so. I believe that my efforts will be rewarded in some kind of way, and all that other stuff will be taken care of. Okay. And so far, it has been. And so that's what I like. That's the hardest part of the campaigning, and getting the folks together and hitting different places in Baldwin Park. And some of us are walking, some of us are riding, but nonetheless, it's every weekend we're hitting the ground running. But the easiest part, I think, for me, and my favorite part, is really just talking to the people.
Okay.
It's interesting, the conversations that I've had about the leadership and just the city itself, what some people want, what they don't want. But that's politics. That's politics anywhere, not just because of city council. That's work politics. That's household politics. That's in the church politics. That's everywhere. But it's just nice to talk to them, and they've appreciated that I'm actually out and about in the neighborhood. Again, going back to what I said before, a lot of them don't know who the leadership is.
And it's interesting. As you were talking, I hear some people say, "Oh, I don't get into that politics stuff. I just leave this stuff alone." People is politics. Yeah. I mean, that if you're around people, there's some political aspect to that. However large or small, but it's basically dealing with people's interests or lack of interest, and what their needs are, what their wants are, and how that interacts with your needs and your interests and what you're trying to get done. And that's basically what leaders do. Leaders don't wait for somebody else to do it for them. They just get out and do it themselves. Yeah. And running for local elected official position is difficult. It's challenging because they tend to be closed systems. Everybody knows everybody else, at least at certain levels. And so you're trying to break into that upper level, so to speak. And many times, for a number of individuals, on average, it takes 2 or 3 times running for the same position. But each time you get better, and you get better, and you get better, and then voila, you pop through. So I think that's terrific. So, if in terms of individuals who are listening to you now, how can they help you?
Well, I'm a praying woman, so prayer, that's always something that can be used. Donations, if they're able to donate.
And where would they send the donations?
Oh, they can send it. They can.
I just got to remember the donations. Okay.
They can send it. They can send it via Zelle at LAURAANN Franklin 919 at gmail.com, and just make sure to put on the line before you send it, campaign donation.
Okay, why don't you give us that again?
Okay, I know it's pretty long.
That's okay.
You can send any donations to LAURAANN Franklin FRANKLIN 919 at gmail.com. Laura Ann Franklin 919 at gmail.com.
Okay, at gmail.com. Okay, good.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD. You can listen again to this and any of the previous episodes. Leave a comment or pose questions to the doctor by going to www.thwwp.com. That's www.thwwp.com, and you've got it. It's also available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to follow, like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. Then tune in for the next episode of the Healthy, Wealthy, and Wise podcast with Dr. William T. Choctaw, MD, JD, a production of Changemakers Communications, LLC.